This morning at Manikonda Cheruvu, we spotted something rather special. A mother Indian spot-billed duck with 5 little ducklings following close behind her. It's monsoon here and the lake has plenty of water, but it isn't exactly clean. Drainage water mixes into the lake, and in some places, the smell is hard to ignore. And yet, right in the middle of all of this, life continues. A mother Indian spot-billed duck with 5 little ducklings following behind her was something very fascinating, and it was a first time experience watching them for us. They moved together along the shallow edge of the lake, occasionally stopping, wading through the water, and then moving again. The mother seemed completely focused on what was happening around her. She would move forward, the ducklings would follow. She would stop, and they would stop. She would begin foraging, and the little ones would start searching around her. It almost looked like a training session. But perhaps for the ducklings, this wasn't training at all. This was simply how they were learning about the world. Indian spot-billed ducks are largely resident birds of the Indian subcontinent. They are commonly found around freshwater lakes, wetlands, ponds, reservoirs, and village tanks. Unlike many water birds that travel long distances during migration, these ducks generally remain within their broader home range, making local movements when water, food, and habitat conditions change. And this little family seemed very much at home here. Even though the surroundings weren't perfect, the ducklings were already capable of walking, swimming, and feeding on their own, as they are precocial by birth. Precocial by birth, meaning that these ducklings hatch in a relatively advanced state compared with many other birds. At or soon after hatching, they can walk, swim, follow their mother, peck and forage for food themselves, and stay mobile rather than remaining in a nest waiting to be fed. However, precocial does not mean independence. These ducklings still depend heavily on their mother for protection, guidance, finding suitable feeding areas, and keeping the brood together. The ducklings were surprisingly fearless. They came close to the bank, they moved through the shallow water. They explored whatever they could find. Every few moments, one of them would wander slightly away, only to come back and join the group again. They didn't need their mother to bring food to them. Instead, they followed her, they watched her, and by staying close to her, they could discover where to look, where to feed, and how to move through their surroundings. The mother wasn't simply leading 5 ducklings across the lake. She was providing something much more important: direction and protection. And the 5 little ones seemed perfectly happy to follow. For several minutes, we simply watched. There was nothing dramatic happening. No chase, no struggle, no spectacular behavior. Just a mother and 5 ducklings spending an ordinary morning together. And sometimes, those are the moments worth watching, because nature doesn't always put on a show for us. Sometimes it simply allows us to sit quietly and witness everyday life. But their peaceful morning didn't last forever. Someone approached the lake a little too closely. The family immediately became alert. The mother began moving away from the bank, and the ducklings followed. One after the other, they moved farther into the water. The comfortable little group that had been feeding beside us was suddenly much farther away. We could still see them, but the moment had changed. The mother continued leading them from the disturbance, and eventually, the 6 of them disappeared into the distance. That was where our morning with the family came to an end, or at least we thought it was. The following morning, the 5 ducklings were nowhere to be seen. Instead, we came across 4 adult Indian spot-billed ducks, and this gave us a chance to look a little more closely at the birds themselves. Indian spot-billed ducks are among the larger ducks commonly found across the Indian subcontinent. Their overall plumage is a beautiful mix of browns and greys with a much paler head and neck. But the feature that gives the duck its name is right there: the bill, black with a distinctive yellow tip. And if we get a close enough look at an adult male, there's another detail to notice: a reddish spot near the base of the bill. The females are similar in appearance, although they are generally smaller and the red spot is absent or much less obvious. Their orange legs and feet add another little splash of color to what otherwise looks like a rather understated bird. They would spread out while foraging, come together again, wander a little farther, and then return to the shallows. For a few minutes, the lake seemed to belong entirely to them. Four adults, one little patch of water, and what looked like a perfect day to simply wander, forage, and enjoy the lake. There was something almost playful about the way they went about their day. No hurry, no particular destination. But watching them brought yesterday's family straight back to our minds, because the lake was suddenly felt a little different. Yesterday, we had been watching five tiny ducklings trying to keep up with their mother. Today, there were only four adults in front of us, and we couldn't help wondering where those five little ones went. Had they moved to another part of the lake? Were they resting somewhere along the bank? Had the mother taken them somewhere else with better food? We simply don't know. So we stayed with these four. They continued moving together. Every now and then, one would stop to forage while the other carried on. We still hadn't found the family, but we weren't ready to give up just yet. So later that day, we decided to visit another lake nearby, which is Cheruvu, just a few kilometers from Manikonda Cheruvu. And to our surprise, something caught our attention. At first, we couldn't quite believe what we were seeing. They were there, the mother and her five ducklings, together. The same family we had been looking for. They had turned up in a completely different lake, roughly 4 to 5 kilometers away from where we had seen them the previous morning. And suddenly the mystery of disappearance didn't feel important anymore. The same family we had been looking for had turned up in a completely different lake, roughly 4 to 5 kilometers away from where we had seen them the previous morning. And for us, it was one of those completely unexpected moments that makes watching nature so rewarding. We had spent the day wondering where they had gone, and nature answered, just not where we expected. Perhaps that is the real lesson from this family. Nature doesn't always wait for perfect conditions. Sometimes life simply adapts. It follows, it learns, it stays together, and it moves forward together. And that's the story of our Indian spot-billed ducks. A story that began with a mother and five ducklings at one lake, went through the day of searching, and ended up with the same family 4 to 5 kilometers away, together again at sunset. A small story, a simple story, but one that we were happy to witness. With that, we are signing off for today. Keep watching, keep learning, and we will see you with our next bird.